Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. It's your boy, Dane Johnson, 3_16, aka Gravity, the man who has never met a mic he didn't like. Normally, I would finish the rest of my jingle, but it's actually taken me a couple days to get into this case because of how absolutely vile it is going down the rabbit hole on this individual that we're going to be talking about. Just really had me in a weird kind of headspace. So let's get into who we're talking about. Quick disclaimer, this is not an easy case. This is a vile case. I will be getting into some gory details, and the outcome is one that you probably wouldn't have seen coming. You wouldn't have expected. So enough being weird about it. Who we talking about? We're talking about David Parker Ray, better known as the Toy Box Killer. Born November 6th, 1939, making this vile, steamy piece of shit a Scorpio. His characteristics: he built a torture chamber out of an old semi-trailer, like imagine a sea can, if you will, or not quite a sea can, but you know, you've seen semis drive around, you've seen the trailers that they pull. That's what this guy turned into, a makeshift sex dungeon. His number of victims is suspected to be well over 60 murders. Now, this is a guy who, believe it or not, spoiler alert, he wasn't tried for any murders. He's a serial killer. He's a known serial killer, but he wasn't tried for any murders, which is outlandish when you think of it, with the deal that this guy ended up making with the FBI. 0 murders. Known victims are 3, and they're not listed, unfortunately, but there's 3 known victims that they do have a confession on, but he wasn't tried for any of them. Suspected of 60. The date of the murders ranging from 1960 all the way to 1999. This is a career serial killer, serial rapist, somebody who did it their whole life. A lot of these other guys we've talked about, they had a little short window. This is our first guy who did it his whole life. His date of arrest, March 12th, 1999. His murder method, unknown. Known victims, unidentified and unnamed women. Crime of the locations, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. Status: not convicted of murder, received a sentence of 224 years imprisonment for other crimes, dying of a heart attack on May 28th, 2002. He died a Gemini. Look at him go. The background of David Parker Ray. Now, as a child, Ray lived with his grandfather, but his abusive father would visit from time to time. In addition to the physical abuse he suffered at the hands of his father, Ray was also bullied at school, largely because he displayed extreme shyness around girls. By the time he was a teenager, he had started using drugs and alcohol regular. He was often having violent sexual fantasies about torture, rape, and murder. He collected photos of women in bondage, and he also made a number of drawings. Described as a sadomasochist, which were discovered by his sister. Oh, I imagine that relationship picked up. After he finished school, he worked as a mechanic. Then he enlisted with the Army. And there it is again. We have another Army guy, another cop. There we go. Ray continued to work as a mechanic while he served in the Army, and he received an honorable discharge when he left. Ray eventually lived in Elephant Butte, New Mexico. But that's where he planned and designed the perfect torture chamber that he would carry out his horrendous fantasies known as the toolbox. Ray fitted this mobile home with every piece of equipment and tool and torture device you could think of, including wall charts on how to inflict the most pain. Jesus. In such an isolated location, Ray could get away with just about anything without any detection, until one of his abductees fought her way out of the toolbox and made a run for it. Now, it's not in this book, and you could only find little tidbits of it on his Wikipedia page, but this is a guy who found talking to these girls, basically explaining what he was going to do to them as trivial. This is a guy who actually made an audio tape recording of what he wanted to, not what he wanted to do, what he was going to do to his victims. He would play a 45-minute tape. Another reason why I couldn't quite do this episode when I wanted to do it was because I listened to that whole 45-minute tape. It's released on YouTube. It's verified. It's actually, it's 100% legitimate. And the things he would describe, the viewer discretion here, please. The things he would describe that he was going to do to these women would boggle your mind. This is a guy who would take electrical clips, clip them to the breast and the vaginal area, and shock these women. This is a guy who wouldn't let girls go to the bathroom until they're about ready to explode. And if they were to go to the bathroom, they were to say, "Master or mistress." That's right. This is a guy who didn't act alone. He also worked with his wife, who he met in 96, which is crazy because he made this tape in 93. So we're going to talk about somebody else as well. His daughter is rumored to be the mistress on the tape. So he would get these victims, these women, and they would be forced to perform sexual acts and be happy about it. If they seemed upset about it whatsoever, well, that's where the missing and not being found comes in. Another thing that's absolutely ridiculous is the women he did let go. Not a lot of them remembered this. This is, well, we'll get more into like how he was actually convicted, but a lot of the girls were identified when, we'll get into the victim who got away here next. I'm pretty sure that's the next part of the story, so I don't want to give it away. But this is I kind of lost my train of thought there because, you know, I'm a little stoned, but I'm sure it's going to come back to me. So don't worry about that, guys. We're having a good time. So again, he's got a soundproof semi-trailer, which he called the toy box. During this time, he would sexually abuse his victims. This sometimes even involved his dog or his wife, who participated willingly in his crimes. And he would torture them with surgical instruments. Then Ray would drug them in an attempt to erase their memory. And he'd abandon them on the side of the road. He was convicted of the kidnapping and torture in 2001, for which he received the lengthy 224-year sentence. So we got into his childhood a little bit. Ray, this is a guy who was divorced 4 times. He had 2 children, including another accomplice, Jessie Ray, who was born Glenda Jean Ray. We'll get into how she was convicted as well. But, man, just an all-around evil man. So the murders here, we're going to get into his murders. So Ray was accused by many people, including his accomplices, of committing multiple murders. Although no bodies have ever been found, the police think the number of murders could be as high as 60. Ray would abduct women and take them back to the toy box, where he could do whatever he wanted to them, including brutal rape, sodomy, and torture. He had set the toolbox up with multiple tools and devices, mostly for inflicting pain and torture. These included clamps, pulleys, whips, chains, leg spreader bars, straps, saws, and surgical blades. There was an abundance of sex toys and diagrams showing different ways to inflict pain on a person. A mirror on the ceiling meant the victim could see what was being done to them. On March 19th, 1999, Ray pretended to be an undercover police officer and convinced Cynthia Vigil that she was being arrested for prostitution. He handcuffed her and took her back to the toy box. 3 days later, she managed to escape, during which time she was involved in a fight with Ray's partner, Cindy Hendy. Vigil stabbed Hendy in the neck with an ice pick, ran out the door naked, with an iron slave collar around her neck, still padlocked in chains. This guy had syringes, again, the detailed diagram showing how to inflict pain, the mirror mounted on the ceiling so you could see what's being done to you. Just the mental torture. This is a guy who sometimes even invited his friends over to watch this. On the tape, it's stated in the tape by Ray himself that when he was done with you, before he was going to drug you and send you on your way, he would set you up in that leg spreading device, the one of those bars, the collar, and he would have his friends over. They would drink and they would watch the dogs go at it with you, which is absolutely... The fact I'm even talking about that right now is just fucking crazy. Again, the audio tape recording of his voice played for his victims whenever they regained consciousness. So he played that audio tape every time they would wake up. Oh man. So, of course, Cynthia was abducted from an Albuquerque parking lot by Ray and his girlfriend, Cynthia Hendy. She was taken back to the trailer and tortured, and after 3 days, she escaped by stabbing her, Hendy, in the neck. So to escape, she waited until Ray had gone to work and then unlocked her chains with the keys that Hendy had left on a nearby table. Hendy noticed Vigil's attempt to escape, and a fight ensued. During the struggle, Hendy broke a lamp on the survivor's head, but Vigil unlocked her chains and stabbed Hendy in the neck with an ice pick. Fleeing in only her slave collar and padlock chains, she ran down the road seeking help, which she got from a nearby homeowner who took her in, comforted her, and called the police. Her escape led officials to the trailers and investigated the capture of Ray and his accomplice. Well, his accomplices. Police detained Ray and Hendy. Another victim, Angelica Monato, came forward with a similar story. She had said that she had been held captive by Ray and Hendy by being invited back to their house after wanting to borrow a thing of cake mix. After being raped and tortured, she convinced the couple that she actually enjoyed it and promised, to go to the police or press charges or anything like that, which is, again, just absolutely crazy. So police identified another victim from a videotape which was dated from 96. Kelly Garrett was found alive in Colorado after police identified her from a tattoo on her ankle, which she testified that she had gotten in a fight with her husband, and she had decided to go out and play pool with her friends. Ray's daughter, Jessie, who knew Garrett, took her to the Blue Water Saloon in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, and this is where she was drugged drinking a beer. She offered Garrett a ride home, but instead took Garrett to her father's house. So this is where the daughter, admits to a crime, but obviously she was a lot more involved than that. So Garrett said that she endured 2 days of torture before Ray drove her back to her home. Ray told her husband that they had found her incoherent on the beach. Her husband did not believe that she could not remember where she was, although Garrett did not want to tell police, so she did not contact him. Her husband sued for divorce, and Garrett moved to Colorado. She was later interviewed on Cold Case Files about her ordeal. So this is a woman who was so afraid to come forward that she actually got divorced, couldn't even tell her husband about it, which happens way too many times. And I'm just unbelievably despicable here. I can't believe that I'm going to say that hopefully I could find like a more endearing serial killer, but this guy, man, you have a little bit of like a hobby or whatever, like a pastime. I'll watch this documentary on this serial killer or whatever, but then, man, you get into some of them, and the guys that are like this, it's just fucking crazy to think about the shit that they did with absolutely no conscience. So while on trial, Ray spoke to FBI profilers and said that he was fascinated by the kidnapping of Colleen Stan and other sexually motivated kidnappings. So the FBI had spoken to Ray as early as 1989 in connection with the business of manufacturing and selling bondage-related sex devices. Other possible victims include Jessie Ray's former girlfriend Jill, who disappeared in 95, and Billy Ray Bowers, who was found shot dead and floating in the Elephant Butte Lake in 89. So, so after Vigil contacted the police, like I said, they came and they arrested Ray. At this time, they thought Ray was only involved in that one attack. They were unaware of the possibility that he might be a serial killer. Another victim came forward after details of the arrest were made public. This was Angelica. She had told the police that she endured the same treatment of the toy box, and she had reported it at the time, and nobody followed up on it. That's fucking crazy. So it was decided that Ray would have 3 trials, one for each victim. The first trial ended up in a mistrial, so it required a retrial where Ray was found guilty of all 12 counts attributed to his attack on Cynthia Vigil. The second trial was meant to be for Angelica Monato's case, but she had died before it started, so that trial was actually dropped. What a cruel fucking twist of fate. That is absolutely unbelievable. Oh, man. So, and for the third trial, he agreed to a plea bargain and was sentenced to 224 years in prison. What a guy. So, we're talking about David Parker Ray. And we can't talk about David Parker Ray and his arrest without his accomplices. His wife at the time, Cindy Handy, who was also arrested, tried, released after 19 years. 39-year sentence, released after 19 years. Out walking the streets right now. His daughter, Glenda Jean Ray, who is involved in bringing her friend back to the toy box, sentenced to 2.5 years plus 5 years probation, squeaky clean right now, walking around, nothing wrong. Another accomplice seemed to be David Parker Ray's protege, if you want to call him that. Maybe he was there on an internship for the summer, I don't know. Roy Yancey, paroled last year, tried with 1 count of second-degree murder. David Parker Ray would abduct anywhere from 5 to 6 girls a year. Would use tools, syringes, all sorts of evil, vile things, including his dog. In a weird twist of fate, Ray was being taken to the correctional center in Lee County. This is in Hobbs, New Mexico, I should say. Troy, you can't just jump on a guy's shoulder like that when I'm in the middle of the serial killers. That's fucking crazy. Oh, sorry. I was in the middle of my talk and my cat just smacked me on the shoulder and scared me there. So on his way to New Mexico to be questioned by the state, he had collapsed and he died on May 28th, 2002, where he suffered a fatal heart attack. A serial killer not convicted of any actual killings. In a weird twist of fate, the toy box killer seemed to have played law enforcement the best he could. All of his accomplices out walking around. One of his victims right before trial, about to die. Why the judge would allow that and not have it go as one big charge is beyond me. But yeah, he's a guy who said he was going to cooperate with police when he took that plea deal, and when they came to talk to him before he died there, he just flat out said, "I'm not cooperating, go fuck yourselves, I already got my deal." That's David Parker Ray. And I'm Dane Johnson, 3_16, aka Grava D, the man who has never met a mic he didn't like. Don't worry, because I'll be back with another serial killer story. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay safe. I thank you for tuning in. Have a great night.